Today we are going to make Fenalår. This is the leg of a lamb. We are going to cure it. And I would say that one of the most common questions that we get is regarding the curing of meats other than pork. So we're actually going to follow the same basic mother recipe when it comes to curing lamb as I use for curing pork. We need to apply salt to this flesh, and in so doing, remove and bind water. Water is not the agent, but the catalyst for spoilage. It's the primordial environment wherein bacteria can get a hold, use the water to reproduce and create a stinky, nasty, rotten mess. The only way bacteria can do that is if it has free water. And what salt does is enable us to either remove it entirely or bind it. Salt actually claims water molecules and doesn't let it be used. So that's what we're going to do here. We are going to distill it. We're going to make sheep liquor, concentrating flavors. So what this will taste like is sheep extra. This is going to taste of the most lamby lamb you've ever had. That's the idea. All right, I'm going to show you the curing apparatus. This is a simple setup and it's really beneficial because it helps prevent the leg from sitting in its own brine. And that is technically the only way to oversalt the leg. So you can see down here, you have a tub, a tabula rasa to be precise, but this one has holes in it. And it's nested in a tub that is unholy. And that tub is actually going to catch all of the brine from the leg, but prevent it from sitting in the brine. And I'm just gonna use salt here. This salt kind of looks fancy, but it's really just Himalayan pink salt. Well, not just, that's the fancy thing about it, but it doesn't have to be that. Use sea salt. Fine sea salt will work just fine. So I've got two legs. We're gonna carve them for Fenalår. I'm gonna show you how to remove the spine from the pelvis. And that will make the salt distribution a little more even and it'll look really cool. I'm gonna put that camera on my head at this time. All right, here we have the leg of lamb. You can see this is the spine and it comes into the pelvis here. This is a bit of the flank. And we're going to start by removing kind of what's left of the tenderloin. You can see that right up there. There's the little tenderloin. So we're going to take out the tenderloin, and in doing so, we're actually going to find this nifty little joint in between the pelvis and the spine. It's kind of cool. You wouldn't think it's there. And so I'm going to start way down here, just getting this little tenderloin out. And basically I'm going to hug the pelvis all the way up to just up to there, but not quite all the way through. So now we can remove the little tenderloin. Yoink, there's the little guy. And then I'll even just get some of this flesh and fat out of the way so you can see what we need to do next. In fact, it's already loosened. If you look really close in there, you can see that it does move. Right here. Right here is where we're going to remove the spine from the pelvis. And there is a little fissure in there, and sometimes you just have to put your knife in there on faith, and it looks like you're going right into bone, but you're not. You just get your tip in there, and then I use the leverage of my knife handle to just curl it around. And in so doing, you actually remove the spine from off the pelvis. And you can cut just under the spine there, where the spine goes out and tapers to the tail, like this. So there is the spine. The pelvis is still intact. Now it's just a matter of rounding things out, because this is what we're going to look at hanging in the kitchen. And so I'm actually going to remove also this flappy business. Essentially, we're just smoothing out all the contours of the leg. Oh yeah, see, it's starting to look kind of pretty now. Nice. Okay, there we go. Look at that shape. Isn't that pretty? The cool thing about this is that you can do this with goat, you can do it with venison, you can do it with all the meats, because again, salt is salt, water is water, and meat is meat. And you will gain a curing sense to be able to turn all of those things not just into something that is delicious, but preserved. And what I mean by that is, to cure meat is not just to flavor it, it is to preserve it until the apocalypse, or you eat it, whichever comes first. That's the goal. And by preserving, I mean it is good to go in room temperature and it will never putrefy. That's the idea. So we are going to try to achieve both of those ends. Preserving the leg without freezing, without refrigeration, and making it taste absurdly delicious. You're going to do a very satisfying thing, which is going to rub salt all over the leg. And this is as close as we're going to get to a recipe with this. You'll find that with these traditional preparations, they're not so much scientific equations like a math problem. It's not this much salt plus this much lamb by this many days equals Fenalår. No, that kind of precision is actually not possible with cured meat. Especially on a home scale, a domestic scale, and especially if you want to approximate the traditional product. There are too many variables. There's variables of humidity, the grind of the salt, the breed of the sheep, its fat content. All of those things affect how much water is in the flesh, how long it will take to remove it. And that is the decisive process, the osmosis of removing water. So I'm going to show you a way that's kind of flexible that will allow you to discern when the leg is cured, rather than be placing your faith in an equation that promises perfect scientific precision, but actually only at the cost of ignoring the details. Now we're going to apply the salt. What I have done is dumped my salt in a bin. See? There it is. And you want to kind of have a lot in there, and then you're going to take your leg of lamb or goat or venison in the salt. And then you're going to sprinkle salt all over the leg. We're just focusing on getting full coverage on the leg. You just want to rub the salt all over. Even distribution. You can see we didn't put a whole bunch of salt on this leg, but it is a nice even distribution. And then that is going to go right in our tub with holes on it. You want to put some salt in the bottom of the tub. This way you don't have meat sitting right on plastic. Fit the legs in there nice and snug. It's a thing of beauty. Now I'm going to actually put them in the refrigerator. Now, it doesn't have to be a refrigerator. The cool thing about refrigerators is that they are rodent and insect safe. That's their primary advantage with traditional cured meats. You could very well cure this in, a cool, drafty place. The crawl space of your house, if you can keep the mice out of it. Any place that's cool and drafty, even a garage with a concrete floor in the winter, is a very cool place. And that's a good place to start your cures on the salt. So I'm gonna put this in the walk-in now in my refrigerator. And it's gonna sit there for 5 days, and I'm going to happily ignore it while the salt does its salubrious work. At the end of that period, I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna do this again. I'm gonna apply the same amount of salt, rub it all up, and then kind of pat it so that there's not any pockets of salt clinging to the meat, but it's just a nice, basically single layer coating of salt. And then we'll put it in the fridge for another 5 days. And then we'll do it one more time for a total of 15 days. And it will have, by that time, have 3 applications of salt. And then it should be good to rinse, dry, and hang. And the only thing to do at that point is to wait. All right, see you in 5 days. Day 5 on the salt. And the first good news is it smells beautiful. I don't see any stickiness or anything like that. No slippery, slimy bacterial populations. Full coverage. Knock off a little excess there. It's still pretty squishy, pretty fresh in here. The more it cures, the more dense it will become. Consequence of the fact that it's losing water. Beautiful. Back in the fridge for 5 days. Third salting. It is time to rinse, dry, and hang these legs. Ooh yeah, they're done. See? Here's what happens. It has firmed up. So now we're going to hang it. And the key with this is to hang it in a cool, dry place. Doesn't need to be temperature and humidity controlled. This is not a ferment, it's slow drying. And so your best bet is to start this in the winter, because the biggest threat when considering a hanging environment for your cured meat are the flies. The biggest threat is the fly. So all you have to do is hang it and wait, and then just like that, it's time to check into it, to carve into the Fenalår and see what flavors have developed. We've got all kinds of crazy molds growing on this thing. My butcher shop is a little dry, and so we get these other weird gray molds and green molds standing on the surface of the meat. And that's just kind of part of how we cure things around here in the Pacific Northwest. If you were to hang a leg like this in a temperature and humidity controlled environment, say in the 50 degrees Fahrenheit, over 80% humidity, you probably would get some white salami molds that you would recognize. Let us carve into the leg. Now we're into the lovely flesh. Fenalår. I don't know why I keep being surprised by how delicious this is. The complexity, intensity of the flavor always seems to far outdo my input. And you actually get the deep, rich flavor of Parmesan cheese. And then we just hang it, we leave it alone. Ambient temperatures, nothing controlled. That is so good. Rapidity with the salt and water, with Did I actually hit record?